I thought I had seen everything in my 65 years as a nurse, but nothing prepared me for the sight of my son-in-law cornering my daughter in a crowded upscale restaurant. He did not just break her spirit that night. He shattered the illusion of their perfect life, and the sound of his father laughing at her pain was the match that finally lit my fuse. My name is Martha, and I am 65 years old. I have spent 30 years working as a head nurse, raising my daughter alone, fighting for every dollar and every moment of happiness. I thought nothing could surprise me anymore, but that day in a restaurant in Savannah, Georgia, when I saw my son-in-law Jason grip my Sarah by the wrist and yank her down in front of a packed room, I realized there was something I could never tolerate. It all started 3 hours earlier. Sarah called to ask me to join her in celebrating her husband's promotion. Jason had finally received a position that meant a lot to him, and Sarah was so happy to share that joy with me. I put on my most beautiful dress, the one I bought for special occasions, combed my hair, and pinned on a pearl brooch. In the mirror, I saw a woman who had been through a lot, but never lost her dignity. Sarah was waiting for me at the restaurant, beautiful as always, but in her eyes I saw something that worried me, that nervous glint, as if she were bracing herself for something difficult. When she hugged me, I felt how tense her body was. "Mom, thanks for coming," she said softly. "It is nothing more than you can imagine." "Of course I came, my darling. This is a big day for you and Jason." We entered the restaurant, which was elegant, with warm lighting, white tablecloths, and a pleasant atmosphere. Jason was waiting for us at the back of a large table where his colleagues and family were already seated. His father, Frank, a man of 70 with a booming voice and even rougher manners, raised his glass as he looked at us. "Here are our ladies," he shouted loudly. "Now the real fun can begin." Sarah shrank beside me. Jason stood up and gave me a cold look, a type of greeting that never means anything good. Over the last few years, I had noticed how he treated Sarah colder and colder, how he gradually separated her from her friends, how he always found a reason to criticize everything she did. The evening started well enough. We talked about work plans for the future, ordinary things. Sarah tried to participate in the conversation, but every time she said something, Jason interrupted or changed the subject. I saw how her smile faded, how she withdrew. "Sarah, say something smart for a change," Jason said with a smirk, after she mentioned she might look for a new job. "Or better yet, say nothing at all." The others at the table laughed uncomfortably, as if it were a witty joke. But I saw how Sarah flinched, how her hands started to tremble. My stomach dropped, but I tried to control myself. This was her marriage, her business. I asked myself right then, how many mothers have sat in silence, watching the light go out in their daughters' eyes, just to keep the peace? But then something happened that broke my heart. Sarah tried to say something about wanting to start learning Italian, something she had mentioned to me a month before. She was so excited about that idea. She was talking about how it could help her career, how she had always wanted to learn that beautiful language. Italian. Jason exploded. "Do you not have enough trouble with English? You always mix up your words. You are always talking nonsense." "Jason, please," Sarah said calmly. "I just thought you did not think anything." He snapped and grabbed her by the arm. "You always think about useless things instead of focusing on what is important." Sarah tried to pull her hand away, but Jason gripped it even tighter. I saw her face turn white from the pain. "Jason let go of me," she said, but very quietly because she did not want to cause a scene. Instead of letting go, Jason stood up and yanked her arm downward. He literally twisted the arm of his beautiful wife, forcing her to sit back down. "When I tell you something, you listen," he said through gritted teeth. Sarah let out a sob, quiet, almost innocent, but her tears were the breaking point. The whole restaurant went silent. People at the adjacent tables turned toward us. The waiter stopped mid-step, and then Frank, Jason's father, exploded with laughter and started clapping. "That is how it is done, son," he said with pride, finally showing her who is the boss. "A woman needs to know her place." The people at the nearby tables shifted nervously, as if this were a normal situation, as if a man manhandling his wife in public was something to be proud of. In that moment, something snapped inside me. All the respect, all the expectations of behaving politely, all the respect for my daughter's in-laws, all of it vanished. Instead, I felt a crystal-clear hatred breaking through me. I stood up very slowly. I put my napkin on the table, smoothed my dress, and looked directly into Frank's eyes. "Frank," I said with a voice that was quiet, but every word rang clearly across the silent restaurant. "You said a woman needs to know her place." He stopped laughing. He sensed something in my tone that warned him, but his arrogance pushed him further. "Yes, Martha, that is how it has always been, and that is how it should be." "Excellent," I said, and laughed a cold sound. "Because now I am going to show you what a woman who knows her place can do." I turned to Jason, who was still gripping Sarah's arm like a primitive man from the Stone Age. "Jason," I said coldly, "let go of her, immediately." "Or what?" he said dismissively. "What are you going to do?" Instead of answering, I picked up my glass of red wine and poured it right over his head. Slowly, with intention, looking him right in the eyes while the wine dripped down his hair and soaked his expensive shirt. The restaurant gasped. People started whispering. The waiter rushed closer. Sarah was finally released. Jason sat there in shock, dripping with red wine, looking like a fool. But I was not finished. "Frank," I said, and I turned to the old man who was still staring with his mouth open. "You told him a woman needs to know her place. My place is protecting my daughter. And your place? Why?" I took a pitcher of ice water from the table and dumped it over his head. "Is to learn how a man with dignity behaves." The restaurant froze. Everyone stared at us. Frank jumped to his feet, wet and furious. "You are a crazy woman," he shouted. "How dare you?" "I dare," I said calmly, "because I have seen too much to look away when someone treats my daughter like an animal." I turned to Sarah, who was looking at me with fear and something that looked like hope. "Sarah," I said gently, "grab your bag. We are going home." "But Mom," she started. "No buts. Your husband and his family need time to think about how they treat women, and you need time to think about what you deserve in life." Jason finally spoke up, still dripping with wine. "Martha, this is absurd. You cannot just—" "I cannot," I interrupted him. "I cannot stand in defense of my daughter. I cannot react when I see someone humiliating her. Jason, I do not care how old she is. I do not care what position you have. One thing I will never allow is for someone to mistreat my child." I looked around the table at all those people who stayed silent while my daughter was humiliated. Colleagues who pretended not to see. Women who looked down at their plates. Family who celebrated cruelty as if it were a joke. "To all of you who sat and watched," I said with a clear, loud voice, "shame on you. If you cannot stand in defense of someone being humiliated right in front of your eyes, then you do not deserve to call yourselves decent people." Sarah stood up and took her bag. Her hands were still shaking, but in her eyes there was something I had not seen for a long time, a light of hope. She walked toward the exit with a dignity that surprised me. Sarah was right beside me, and behind us remained a restaurant full of people who had learned an important lesson about what happens when someone forgets. That every woman, no matter her age, has her limit. As we walked out into the night air, Sarah grabbed my hand. "Mom," she said, and her voice trembled. "Thank you." "You have nothing to thank me for, honey," I said, and squeezed her hand. "What happened back there was just the beginning. Now we are going to talk about what you really deserve in life." As we walked to my car, Sarah was very quiet. I felt her hand shaking in mine, but she said nothing. Only when we got into the car and closed the doors did she finally speak. "Mom, what did I do?" she said, and her voice was barely a whisper. "How am I going to go home tomorrow? How am I going to face Jason?" I turned to her and saw her face had gone pale. She was not worried about what Jason did to her. She was worried about what I did to him. "Sarah," I said quietly but decisively, "look at me. She raised her eyes, which were full of fear and innocence. "You did nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing. A man who drags a woman down in public is not a man who deserves respect." "But, Mom, you do not understand," she said, and started to cry. "He is not always like this. Sometimes he is very sweet. He buys me flowers. He tells me he loves me." Those words hit me like a slap. I recognized them because I had heard them from so many women during my years working in healthcare. Women who came in with bruises and tried to explain how their men actually loved them, how it was just one bad day, how it was their fault. "My darling," I said, and took her face in my hands. "Love does not mean being cruel sometimes. Love means respect, every day, in every situation." Sarah lowered her head, but I could see she did not fully believe my words yet. 30 years of life with someone who gradually broke her self-confidence could not be changed in a day. I took her to my house instead of taking her back to the apartment she shared with Jason. Sarah did not object. It even seemed like she was relieved. At home, I made her chamomile tea, and we sat in my kitchen, which held so many memories of our days together when she was little. On the walls were still her childhood drawings, photos from her graduation, pictures from the day she finished college. "Do you remember," I said while she drank her tea, "when you were 8 years old and that boy in class pushed you on the playground?" Sarah smiled faintly. "Yes, you came to the school and talked to him. And what did I tell you that day? You told me that I can never allow anyone to treat me like I am worth less than I am." "Exactly," I said, "and that applies whether you are 8 or 38. Sarah leaned back and looked at me. In her eyes, I saw the struggle between fear and hope. "Mom, I am afraid," she said quietly. "I am afraid of what people will say. I am afraid of being alone. I am afraid I cannot live on my own." I reached out and sat beside her. I took her hands, and they felt both cold and burning. "Sarah, I want you to tell me one thing. When was the last time you were truly happy, genuinely satisfied, not just because you avoided an argument, but when was the last time you felt like you had your place in the world?" She thought for a long time before she answered. 3 years ago," she said finally, "before we got married. I worked in that small gallery. I had my apartment. I met with my friends. And what happened to those things?" Sarah looked down. "Jason said working in the gallery was a waste of time, that I did not earn enough money, that it was better for me to manage the house while he built his career. He told me my friends were a bad influence." "And you listened to him?" "Yes," she said. "I thought that meant he loved me, that he wanted to take care of me." I looked at my daughter and saw the woman who had lost herself. But I also saw the strength she inherited from me, the strength that was buried under years of manipulation, but was still there. Sometimes we mothers have to be the mirror our daughters cannot find anywhere else. I had to show her the reflection of the queen she truly was, not the servant she had become. "Sarah," I said, "I want you to understand one thing. What happened tonight in the restaurant was not an accident. It was a moment where Jason showed who he really is. And who he really is someone who considers you his property, not his partner." Sarah started to protest, but I interrupted her. "Listen to me until the end," I said. "A man who loves you will never humiliate you in front of other people. He will not pull you down. He will not tell you to shut up when you try to express your opinion. He will not isolate you from your friends. That is not love, my dear. That is control." Sarah was crying now, but they were different tears than in the restaurant. These tears were cleansing, as if she could finally feel herself and feel the pain that had been suppressing her. "What can I do, Mom?" she said through her tears. "I do not know how to start over. I do not know who I am anymore." "You are my daughter," I said firmly. "You are a woman who speaks 3 languages, who finished college with high honors, who can create beautiful paintings, who knows how to take care of everything around her. You were all those things before Jason, and you still are. I stood up and took one of those old photo albums from the shelf. I opened it to the page where there was a photograph of Sarah from her exhibition at the gallery 4 years ago. In the picture, she was happy, radiant, full of energy. "This is you," I said, showing her the photograph. This woman standing next to her paintings, knowing she created something wonderful. This woman who was not afraid to show the world her talent. Sarah looked at the photograph. "I do not know how to go back to that," she whispered. "Step by step," I said, "and you are not alone. I am here." We spent the next hour planning. Sarah decided she would stay with me for a few days until she figured out what she wanted to do. She called her job and took some days off. She told them she needed time to think about important life decisions. That night, Jason started calling. Sarah looked at her phone as if it were a dangerous animal. "What if I do not answer?" she asked. "Then you do not answer," I said simply. "You have the right to think in peace." The phone rang 10 times before it stopped. Then it started again. Sarah finally turned it off. "You did good," I said. "Tomorrow we will talk about practical things. Tonight, we just need a peaceful sleep." But sleep did not come easily to either of us. I lay in my bed listening to the quiet sounds from the room where Sarah was trying to sleep. At 3 a.m, I heard her moving around the room, so I got up and went to her. "I cannot sleep," she told me when I walked in. "Me neither," I admitted. "Do you want us to make hot cocoa like back when you were little?" Sarah smiled through tears. "Yes, please." We sat in the kitchen drinking cocoa and talking about small things, about her drawings on the walls, about the garden I planned to plant in the summer, about the books we had read. There was something healing in those normal conversations, as if we were putting back pieces of her personality that had been lost. "Mom," Sarah said as we finished the cocoa, "thank you for not leaving me." "I will never leave you," I said. "You are my daughter. You are part of my heart, and even if you make 1,000 mistakes, I will still love you and stand by you." Sarah hugged me then, for the first time, really hugged me. The embrace was tight, and I felt her body releasing all the tension she had been carrying for months. "Tomorrow, we start again," I said. "Step by step, day by day. You are not alone in this." The next morning, we woke up to the sound of someone pounding on the door. Sarah jumped as if she heard a gunshot. "That is Jason," she said, and her face went white. The pounding became louder and more aggressive. We heard Jason, his voice yelling, "Sarah, I know you were in there. Come out so we can talk." Sarah grabbed my hand. "What should we do?" I looked at my daughter, who looked like a scared child, and then I felt that same rage that hit me the night before in the restaurant. "We do nothing," I said calmly. "I am going to talk to him." I went to the door, but I did not open it. "Jason," I said loud enough through the door, "Sarah does not want to see you. Leave today. Please leave." "Martha, this is none of your business," he yelled back. "She is my wife. She is my daughter," I replied, "and as long as she is in my house, it is my responsibility to protect her from people who humiliate her." The pounding stopped for a moment and then became louder. "Open the door or I will call the police." "Excellent," I said calmly. "Call them. I will explain to them why my son-in-law drags women around in public." Jason swore behind the door, but he did not knock again. After 10 minutes of yelling and threats, he finally left. Sarah looked at me with surprise and fear at the same time. "Mom, what if he comes back?" "Then we call the police," I said calmly. "Sarah, this house is a safe place for you. Here there is no yelling, no dragging in the street, no humiliation. Here you can think clearly about what you really want." And for the first time since she entered my house, Sarah smiled truly. "Maybe I will stay a day or two more." "Yes," I said. "You can stay as long as you want. This is your home, always." The third day after the incident in the restaurant marked the beginning of my daughter's transformation. We woke up early, and Sarah, for the first time since she arrived, looked rested. The sun was coming through my kitchen window while we prepared breakfast, and I noticed Sarah was humming quietly while she boiled the eggs. It was a small thing, but it meant a lot. I had not heard her sing in a long time. "How do you feel?" I asked her while we sat at the table. "Different," she said thoughtfully. Like I woke up from a heavy dream. I cannot explain it. You do not have to explain, I said. It is important that you feel you are moving in the right direction. Sarah tilted her head and took a sip of juice. Mom, I think it is time to talk to the gallery. Maybe they still need someone. It was the first time she mentioned something practical about her future. I felt my heart swell with pride. The gallery, I said. Do you want me to drive you there? No, she said decisively. I think it is better if I go alone. I must start doing things on my own again. After breakfast, Sarah got ready to go out. She put on a simple black skirt and tied her hair up. She looked younger than she had in months, like some life had returned to her. But when she started to leave, she froze. There was a black car parked down the street from my house. Sitting inside was Frank, Jason's father. Sarah stepped back. They are watching me, she said with a voice full of fear. I looked through the window and saw the old man who yesterday celebrated when his son grabbed my daughter by the arm. Rage returned, but this time I was even more decisive. Sarah, I said calmly, they are trying to scare you into coming back. Do not let them do that. But what if? What if what? I interrupted her. What if they try to talk to you? You have the right to say no. What if they get aggressive? We call the police. Sarah, you have the right to ignore them. Sarah took a deep breath. Okay, I am going to the gallery, and I am going with you, but I will stay in the car, I said. Not because I think you cannot do it alone, but because I want to be close to you. Often people tell me they appreciate my good explanation of art. These words hit me deeply. Sarah was so sure she was not good at anything, that she had no talent, that she could not survive alone. And here is the proof that all of that was Jason's lie. I want to ask you something, I said as we drove home. Did you never tell Jason that people appreciate you at work? Sarah hesitated. Yes. I even showed him some of the comments people left in the guest book. Look. And what did he say? He said, those are just people pretending to understand art, trying to be polite. He said, I should not trust everything people say, because they just try to be nice. My stomach turned. This was worse than I thought. Jason did not just criticize Sarah. He systematically ruined all her achievements, all the confirmations that she was valuable and capable. Sarah, I said seriously, Miss Helen is a businesswoman. She would not offer a job to someone who is not good at what they do. She wants you because she knows you will do a good job. Sarah nodded, but I saw she was still fighting years of doubt that Jason planted in her. When we arrived home, the black car was still there. This time, Frank got out and came toward us. Sarah spoke her voice, trying to be firm, but it shook. We have nothing to talk about. Yes, we do, said Frank, and his voice was harsher than I expected. Listen, girl, he continued. I know your mother put some ideas in your head, but you must return home. Jason is sad. He says he misses you. Frank. I said before Sarah could answer. Sarah is a grown woman. She can make her own decisions. You hold your tongue, he snapped at me. This is between my son and his woman. Sarah stood still, and I saw her hand tremble a little. But then she raised her head and said something that surprised me with its strength. Frank, she said calmly, your son yanked my head down in public. You laughed at that. I will not return to a home where I am treated like I am worth less. What do you say? Frank sneered. It was a small incident. Husbands sometimes have to show the wife who is the leader. And Jason said, Sarah, and her voice was clearer, there is no justification for what he did. Frank looked at me as if I were to blame for Sarah's words. You are the culprit against us, he accused me. She was a good wife before you started meddling. At that moment, I realized how much Frank and Jason were alike. The same approach, the same belief that women must be controlled, the same inability to see women as equal human beings. Frank, I said with that voice, Sarah was a good wife, as you call it, because she was scared and isolated. Now she is a woman who knows her worth. This is not going to end like this, he said. Jason's wife has to come home." "Or what?" said Sarah, and this time in her voice there was no fear. "What are you going to do? Are you going to drag me by the hair like your son did?" Frank was so surprised by her answer that he was left speechless for a moment. Sarah used that silence to continue. "Tell Jason he can find me when I am ready to talk to him, but that won't be soon." With those words, Sarah walked into the house. I stayed a few seconds looking at Frank, who stood with his eyes wide open. "Do you remember," I said to him yesterday in the restaurant, "when you said a woman needs to know her place?" He was flustered, still in shock. "Sarah has learned her place," I said with a smile. "Her place is where she is respected. It is not in your family." I went into the house, leaving Frank on the street. Sarah sat in the living room and her hands were shaking, but on her face was an expression I had not seen in years, an expression of pride. "Mom," she said, "I cannot believe I said that." "I can," I said, and I sat beside her. That was a woman standing up for herself, a woman who is backing herself. "I am afraid," she admitted, "but I also feel strong." "That is normal," I said. "When you start standing up for yourself after a long time, it is terrifying and exciting at the same time." The rest of the day passed quietly. Sarah called Ms. Helen and confirmed she would start working next Tuesday. She also called her friend Emily, the one Jason did not like, and agreed to meet her the next day for coffee. "I have not seen her in so long," Sarah told me. "Jason always found a reason why I could not go out with her. Isolation is one of the first things controllers do," I told her. "They separate you from everyone who could tell you that you deserve better." Sarah nodded and thought. I am starting to understand how many things were not normal. And at night while we ate dinner, Sarah asked me a question that surprised me. "Mom," she said, "why did Dad turn away from us when I was little?" She had not talked about her father in a long time. He left when Sarah was 10. He told her he was not ready for the responsibility of a family. "Your father was a man who did not know what it meant to be a partner," I told her gently. "He loved the idea of a family, but he was not ready to work for it every day." "Is that why I chose Jason?" asked Sarah. "Because it felt familiar that a man controls everything?" That question hit me deeply. Sarah was starting to understand the patterns in her life, how the past influenced her choices. "Maybe," I said honestly, "but it is important to understand that you are not responsible for Jason's attitude. Despite your past, despite everything, you are not to blame that he mistreated you." Sarah nodded. "I know. Here," she said, pointing to her head, "but feeling that with the heart is difficult." I told her everything takes time. Later that evening, as I was getting ready for bed, I heard Sarah on the phone in her room. She was speaking quietly, but I could hear she was talking about practical things, probably bank accounts or documents. In the morning, she told me she called a lawyer. "I want to understand my rights," she said, "and I want to know what I should do to be financially independent. Is that a bad step?" I told her it was a brilliant step. "I am scared," she said, "but I also feel like I am controlling my life for the first time in years." I was looking at my daughter that night and saw a woman returning to herself. Not completely, that would need time, but I saw the strength and determination that had been buried under years of doubt and manipulation. Sarah was at the beginning of her journey toward freedom, and I knew I would be with her every step of that way. The first day at the gallery was for Sarah like a return to a world she had forgotten existed. She woke up with a mix of nerves and excitement. She put on her nicest work blouse, a crisp white one she had not worn in ages, and pinned her hair up. "How do I look?" she asked me while we ate breakfast. "You look like a woman who belongs exactly where she is going," I said sincerely. Sarah laughed, but I could see she was still nervous. "What if I forgot everything I knew? What if I am not good at this anymore?" "Sarah," I said gently, "you were away from the gallery for 2 years, not 20. Knowledge is not lost so easily, and the passion for art you have is a part of you that will never change." I drove her to the gallery that first day, against her wish to take the bus. "I want to be there if you need me," I said. "Later, when you get settled, you can go however you want." Ms. Helen was waiting with a big smile and introduced her to the other employees. Sarah was quiet in the first few minutes, listening attentively to everything explained, asking smart questions. I watched her across the gallery and saw how she woke up, how she became confident in her movements. Around noon, Sarah led her first tour group. I was there, pretending to observe the exhibition, but really, I was observing her. When she started talking about the paintings, her voice became sure and warm. She explained techniques, historical contexts, the importance of the artworks. The people in the group listened with attention, asked questions, and thanked her at the end of the tour. "Thank you so much," said an elderly woman. "I never understood contemporary art. You have a gift for making complicated things accessible." Sarah glowed with satisfaction, and I felt my heart full of pride. This was my daughter, as she was meant to be. Expert, confident, proud of her work. But the biggest test awaited her when we returned home. In front of the house stood Jason. He was not aggressive, nor was he loud this time. On the contrary, he looked sad, almost defeated. Sarah froze when she saw him, and I felt her body tense up again. Sarah said quietly, "Please, just 5 minutes. We have to talk." Sarah looked at me and then at him. I saw the struggle in her eyes between the new strength she was building and the old habits of submission. "Can you wait for me in the car?" "Mom," she said quietly. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Yes, I must resolve this alone." I went to the car but left the windows open so I could hear if Sarah needed help. She and Jason spoke a few feet away from me, but they spoke quietly. "Sarah, I am hurt by what happened at the restaurant." I heard Jason speak. He knew he had done something wrong. "I was stressed at work. I drank too much wine." "Jason, stop it," Sarah said, and she was calmer than I expected. "It was not the first time." "What first time?" he said, but without confidence. "It was a useless situation." "No," said Sarah firmly. "Do you remember when you called me stupid in front of my friends? Do you remember when you threw my photos in the trash because you said they took up too much space? Do you remember when you forbade me from going to see Emily to celebrate my birthday?" Jason stood there in silence. He probably expected Sarah not to mention those things, that she would focus only on the incident in the restaurant. "Those were small fights between us," he said finally. "All married couples have problems." "No," said Sarah, and I was proud of the firmness in her voice. "It is not normal for a husband to forbid his wife from seeing friends on her birthday. It is not normal for you to try to make me believe I am an idiot. It is not normal for you to isolate me." I saw how Jason controlled himself while trying to respond. "Sarah, stop being so dramatic," he said, and in his voice that tone I knew started to sound. "Maybe sometimes I was rough, but it is because I love you, and I want you to be the best version of yourself." "No," said Sarah decisively, "that is not love. Love does not mean you change someone or control them. Love means you accept the person as they are and support them to be what they want to be." These words impacted me deeply. Sarah finally understood the difference between love and control. Months of conversation, years of experience all came together in this moment of clarity. Jason tried a different approach. "Listen," he said with a voice, trying to sound reasonable. "I know you are angry and you have the right to be. We can go to counseling. I can change." Sarah thought for a long time before she answered. "Maybe you can," she said finally, "but I am not going back to see if you try to change me or not. I need time to be with myself, to remember who I was before we got married." "How much time?" asked Jason, and in his voice there was anger. "I do not know," said Sarah honestly. "Maybe months, maybe more. Maybe I will decide I do not want to be in a marriage that makes me angry." Jason exploded then. "Angry? Sarah, I give you everything. A house, security, a future. You give me a house in which I felt like a prisoner," said Sarah, and her voice did not shout. "You give me security, which meant I should not have my own opinion. You give me a future in which everything I love is wrong or does not matter." Jason stood in shock. Probably he had never heard Sarah speak like this, clear about what she feels. "This is because of your mother," finally Jason said. "She filled your head with nonsense." "No," said Sarah. "My mom helped me remember what I had forgotten, which was that I deserved respect." With those words, Sarah turned and walked toward the car. Jason stood on the street looking at her, lost and angry at the same time. "How do you feel?" I asked her when she got into the car. "Angry," she said honestly, "but also liberated, like I finally said everything I have kept inside me." Over the next few days, Sarah flourished in her career. Ms. Helen praised her, visitors left beautiful comments about her tours, and Sarah started drawing again in her free time. She sat at my kitchen table every day, drawing portraits of people she had seen during the day or sketching scenes she remembered from our walk. "I forgot how much I missed drawing," she told me one night. "Jason always said it was a waste of time." Jason thought a lot of things. I told her, "Your talent is not one of them." But not everything was fine. Jason's family did not give up. Frank came every day and parked his car by my house. Sometimes he just sat there for 2 hours as if he wanted to show us he was watching. Another time, he got out and tried to speak to Sarah when she left the house. "This is becoming harassment," I told Sarah after Frank tried to stop us when we went to the store. "Maybe we should call the police." "No," said Sarah. "He is not doing anything illegal. He just tries to scare me into coming back." "And did he succeed?" Sarah thought before answering. "Sometimes, but then I remember how I felt when I lived with Jason, and I know I do not want to go back to that." On day 5 after she started working, Sarah received a strange message. Emily, her friend she had not seen in a long time, sent her a photograph from the old gallery where Sarah and Emily used to study. "Remember our student presentations?" she replied in the message. "I found the photo. You were so happy back then." Sarah showed me the photograph. It was Sarah, laughing and bright, standing with Emily in front of a small gallery in a student dorm. Both were aspiring artists full of life. "You look so different," Sarah thought. "You look like a person no one told that dreaming was stupid." Sarah looked at the photograph. "Mom," she said finally, "I think I am ready." "Ready for what?" "To call a lawyer and start the divorce proceedings." These words surprised me, even though I expected them. Sarah lived so long in fear of loneliness that this decision meant a huge step. "Are you sure?" I asked. "Not totally," she admitted, "but I know I cannot move forward until I close this chapter, and I know I will not return to a life where someone treats me as incapable or stupid." That night, Sarah talked a long time with the lawyer. She talked about the division of property, about the process, about what she can expect. When she finished the conversation with the lawyer, she looked relieved but determined. "The lawyer says it is going to be complicated because we were married 2 years and have joint assets," she explained. "But he says I have a right to a fair share." "And how do you feel about that?" "It feels ugly," she said honestly, "but I also feel like I finally have control over my life." The next day, Jason arrived at my door. This time, he was not alone. With him was his legal counsel, a man with a briefcase. Martha said Jason formally, "I have to speak to Sarah about important things." Sarah was home because she had a day off. She heard voices at the door and came out of her room. "What do we have to talk about?" she asked. The lawyer spoke up. "Ma'am, your husband wants to resolve your marriage without involving the courts." Sarah looked at me and then at them. "I already have my lawyer," she said calmly. "All communications can go through him." Sarah said Jason, and his voice was shocked. "Can we not talk like adults? Why do you complicate the situation?" "I am not complicating anything," replied Sarah. "You complicated things when you dragged me by the head in public." Obviously, Jason's lawyer was uncomfortably surprised by this information. He looked at Jason with concern. "That was unacceptable," said Jason quickly. "No, that was the sign of what our marriage really is," said Sarah. "And I do not want to be in a marriage where those things happen." With these words, Sarah went into the house, leaving Jason and his lawyer at the door. "I told you your temper made a mistake," Jason said to me. "Now she loses everything we built together." "Sarah loses nothing worth keeping," I said calmly. "She gains her freedom and dignity." That night, while we sat and looked at photos from our old album, Sarah asked me a question that surprised me. "Mom, do you regret how you reacted in the restaurant?" "No," I said without hesitation. "I regret that I did not react sooner. All the times I saw how they treated you, I held back because I thought I should not interfere." Sarah lowered her head. "And I regret that I did not have the strength to defend myself sooner." "But you have found it now," I said. "Yes," she said, "I have found it." 2 weeks after Sarah started the divorce, something happened that surprised us. Sarah received a call from the director of a large art gallery in New York City. He heard about her work and wanted to offer her a job at the gallery as a contemporary art specialist.
"Mom, I cannot believe it,"
said Sarah with the phone in her hand.
"The director of the New Horizon Gallery wants to see me next week."
This gallery was one of the most respected in the country. Working there meant a career Sarah always dreamed of, but never thought was possible. "That is wonderful," I said. "I feel my heart is full of pride. When are you going to talk?" "Thursday." "But Mom, that would mean moving to NYC. That would mean leaving you here alone." I saw the worry in her eyes. Sarah, during the last few weeks, became very protective toward me, as if she feared someone she loved would disappear from her life again. "Sarah," I said kindly, "this is the opportunity that happens once in a lifetime. You cannot leave it for me." "But what if something happens? What if Jason or his father tries something when I'm not here?" "Then I will call the police," I said simply. "Sarah, I took care of you and me for 30 years. Can I take care of myself now, too?" Sarah was quiet for a few moments, thinking about everything that could happen. "Maybe it is too early," she said finally. "Maybe I should stay here until the divorce is final. Or maybe," I told her, "you should show everyone, including yourself, that you are capable of building the life you want, no matter what others think." That night, Sarah walked around the house thinking. I saw how she fought between the desire for a new life and the fear of the unknown. For years, Jason convinced her she could not live alone, that she was too dependent, that others should take important decisions instead of her. "Do you know what scares me most?" she told me while we drank coffee before sleep. "Tell me." "It scares me that Jason is right, that really I am too dependent, that I am going to make a mistake and show everyone I am not good enough." These words scared me. Sarah was a brilliant woman with an excellent education and a talent for art. But Jason had destroyed her confidence so much she started to believe his lies. "Sarah," I said, "seriously, do you remember when you were little and you were scared of the bicycle?" She laughed. "Yes, you told me I would never learn to ride if I did not try. And what happened when you finally tried?" "I learned in a day and then rode my bike everywhere." "Exactly," I said. "The fear did not stop you from learning. It stopped you from trying. But when you tried, you discovered you could, much more than you thought." Sarah nodded, thinking. "Maybe it is time to try riding the bike again," she said quietly. The next day, Sarah called the gallery in New York and confirmed she was coming to talk. She also called her friend Emily and asked if she could stay with her 2 days in the city. Finally, Emily screamed through the phone so loud I heard her. "I am coming to NYC to wait for you." Before Sarah left for New York, something happened that changed everything. Ms. Helen from the gallery called her with news. "Sarah," she said excitedly, "do you have time to come to the gallery? I have someone who wants to meet you." When we arrived at the gallery, an elegant man in his 40s with a friendly smile was waiting for us. He introduced himself as Mr. Bennett, director of an art magazine. "Miss Sarah," he said, "I have been following your work here at the gallery. I am especially impressed with your approach to explaining contemporary art to young visitors. I have a proposition for you." Mr. Bennett explained he is preparing a series of articles about young art experts. He wanted Sarah to write an article about how to make art more accessible to a wider audience. "Your article would be the lead story, Ms. Sarah, in our next issue," he said. "It goes out to about 10,000 people, including every major player in the art world." Sarah was so surprised she almost could not speak. "I never wrote for a magazine," she finally said. "There is a first time for everything," said Mr. Bennett with a smile. "And from what I saw, you have a lot to say." When we returned home, Sarah was in total shock. "Mom, I cannot believe all this is happening at once," she said. "Job in New York offer to write? Like the whole world opened up when I finally decided to stand up for myself." "That is not a coincidence," I told her. "When a person breaks free from a situation that restricts them, possibilities start to appear naturally. You always had talent and abilities. You just were not in the environment that allowed you to show them." That night, while Sarah was preparing for the trip to New York, Jason returned. This time he was alone, without a lawyer, and without his father. He looked tired and much older than a few weeks ago. "Sarah," he said through the door, "I beg you, give me 5 minutes. Just 5 minutes." Sarah looked at me, and I nodded my head. "Your decision," I said. Sarah went out to the porch to talk to him, while I stayed in the kitchen near the window to hear if she needed help. "Sarah, I heard you were interviewing for a job in New York," said Jason. "How? Do you know?" asked Sarah. "It is a small town. People talk." Jason paused. "Sarah, please remember what you are doing. New York is a big city. Being there alone without support—" "I will have support," said Sarah calmly. "I will have friends who like me as I am, who do not want to change me." "Sarah, you know I love you," said Jason. His voice sounded desperate. "We can start from the beginning. I can change." "Maybe you can," said Sarah, which surprised me, "but I have already changed. I am no longer the person who will silence herself when someone does not respect her. I am no longer the person who will believe she is not good enough for her dreams." "Your mother told us she is not enough for her dreams, and that she is not enough for her dreams, and that she is not enough for her dreams, and that she is not enough for her dreams. For her dreams. And that is not enough, and that is not enough for her dreams." I asked Sarah as if she finally said what she had to say 2 years ago. She answered. The next morning, when we prepared for the trip to New York, Sarah told me something that touched me deeply. "Mom, thanks for not letting me lose myself in that marriage." "You did not lose yourself," I said. "You were just hidden. But the real Sarah, the strong Sarah, was there all the time." As we traveled toward New York, Sarah talked to me about her plans. She wanted to find a small apartment, start writing an article, prepare for a conversation at the gallery. She was scared, she said it, but she was also excited, as if she were no longer weighed down. "It is a good combination," I told her. "The fear. It shows you are doing something important. The excitement shows you are doing what you desire." When we arrived in New York, Emily was waiting with a big smile and hugs. Also, there was Miss Helen from the local gallery who came to support Sarah. "Finally, I see the real Sarah," said Miss Helen, "the one I knew before she faded." That night, the 4 of us sat in Emily's small apartment, drank coffee, and planned Sarah's tomorrow. I heard how Sarah talked about her goals, how she asked about life in the city, how she laughed at the jokes Emily made. This was my daughter, the one I always knew could be smart, funny, full of enthusiasm for life. Before I returned to our town, Sarah grabbed my hand. "Mom," she said, "I know this is not the end. I know there will be hard days and moments when I will be scared. But for the first time in years, I know I can get through it. And you will always have a home with me whenever necessary." As I traveled back home, I thought about everything that happened in the last few months, from that night in the restaurant when I poured wine on Jason to this moment when my daughter starts a new life full of confidence. I know this is not the end of our story. I know Sarah will pass through all the challenges of life in the new city, the divorce process, the rush of the city. But I also know she is now a strong woman who will not allow anyone to repeat that she is less valuable. And regarding me, I also learned something important. I learned that it is never too late for those we love. I learned that dignity has no age. And I learned that sometimes the strongest act of love is teaching someone they are valuable enough to seek the best. The story continues, but this week was the beginning of something new for both of us. 3 months after Sarah went to New York, her life changed in ways neither of us could foresee. The interview at the New Horizon Gallery was a success. Such a success that they offered her a job immediately and helped find a beautiful small apartment in the city center. Sarah called me every day of the first month, sometimes 3 times a day. She was excited, amazed, lonely, and proud. At the same time, I listened to how she described her new routine, her colleagues who respected her, the exhibitions she prepared. "Mom, today I guided an important group of art collectors," she told me one night. "I talked to them about young artists, and they were so impressed they bought 2 paintings immediately." The pride in her voice was something I had not heard for years. But the biggest change was in Sarah's personality. When she called me, she spoke faster, laughed more. She had many stories of people she met and things she learned. This was a woman who finally lived the life she wanted. Do you know what is most unexpected? She told me after 6 weeks in New York, "I discovered I can make my own decisions. I bought an apartment I like. I go to restaurants that interest me. I choose movies I want to see." I never understood before how important that was. But not everything was fine. Jason and his father did not stop the pressure, even at that distance. They tried to influence Sarah's new life. At the beginning of the 3rd month, Sarah called me more upset than usual. She said, "Mom Frank appeared today at the gallery." She said, and her voice shook, "He waited for me when I left work." My heart stopped. What happened? "He told me I am acting selfishly, that I am destroying my family, that Jason will end up badly because of me. He said he came to convince me to return home." "And what did you tell him?" "I told him New York is my home now, and I am not going to talk to him about private things." "But Mom, I was scared. I was so angry." "Sarah," I said with a firm voice, "did you tell anyone at work what happened?" "No, I did not want to create problems." "There are no problems you create," I interrupted her. "Tell your director what happened. They have to know that someone is harassing you at your workplace." Sarah was careful, but she listened to my advice. The gallery director, Mr. Paul, was surprised and worried when Sarah explained the situation. "Mrs. Sarah," he said immediately, "this is something very serious. The gallery has a security system, and we can ensure these things do not repeat. I do not want my private life to influence work," said Sarah. "Your private life does not influence work," explained Paul. "But the safety of our employees influences everything we do. I will talk to security." On that day, Sarah felt supported in a way she had not experienced for a long time. She had colleagues who protected her, a boss who understood the seriousness of the situation, a job that gave her meaning. But the biggest test came a week later. Jason arrived in New York. He did not appear at Sarah's work. Probably his father told him how that ended. Instead, he waited in front of Emily's apartment. "Sarah, we have to talk," he said when he saw her. Sarah called me immediately, and I heard the fear in her voice. "Mom, Jason is here. I do not know what to do." "Where are you now?" I asked. "In the coffee shop down the street from the apartment. Emily is with me. Do you feel safe?" "Yes, but what if he keeps coming?" "Then you will do what you learned," I told her. "You will stand for yourself and use all the support you have." Sarah took a deep breath. "Okay, I will talk to him, but not alone." Emily insisted on going with her, and I was proud my daughter had such a good friend. The 2 of them went to see Jason, who was still at the apartment. The phone conversation that happened was one of the most important things in Sarah's life. Sarah told Jason, when she looked at him, "This has to stop. You are my wife. Your place is with me in the house. My place is where I am happy," said Sarah calmly, "and that is not with you." "But Sarah, you are leaving without thinking. Our home, our future, everything we built, Jason." Sarah interrupted him. "I did not leave anything valuable. I left a life where you treated me as if I were incapable, where I feared expressing my opinion, where I forgot what I love." "That is not true," said Jason. "I gave you everything." "You did not give me what is most important," said Sarah firmly. "You did not give me respect." Emily stood beside Sarah, quiet but firmly present. And I felt through the phone what that support meant. "Sarah, Sarah, if you will not return, at least stop doing this. Goodbye. Jason tried a different approach. We can stay married but live separately. No, said Sarah, without accusation. I want to be free to build a new life. I want the possibility to move on in the future. If I find someone who treats me like a partner, not like property, it won't be the same. These words obviously hit Jason the hardest. The idea that Sarah could be with someone else was unbearable. There are no people like that, he told her. No one is going to love you like I loved you. I hope no one is going to love me like you did, said Sarah, and her voice was strong. I hope no one is going to love me enough to try to change me. After that conversation, Jason left New York. But Sarah did not feel like a victim. She called me that night, emotional and tired. Mom, is it normal that I feel sad, even though I know I did the right thing, she asked. Totally normal, I said. You are losing the life you knew. Even if that life did not suit you, it is a big loss. Sometimes I fear I will never find someone to love me truly, she told me. Sarah, I said gently, you have 8 years to learn who you are when you are not catering to someone else. Enjoy that. Discover what you love, what you want to do, what woman you want to be. Love will arrive when it is time. Over the next few weeks, Sarah grew again. She started learning Italian. What she wanted before, Jason discouraged her. She joined a club of young professionals in New York. She started exercising regularly at a gym. I feel like I am relearning to be Sarah, she told me during one of our conversations, like I am discovering parts of me that hid for a long time. A woman who wrote for an art magazine with great success. Mr. Bennett, the director, called to congratulate her and offered her a monthly column. Ms. Sarah, your article made a fantastic impact. He told her readers, love your way of explaining art. We would like you to write for us regularly. This offer meant additional income, but more importantly, it meant recognition of Sarah's talent. She became a known name in the art world. One night, 4 months after moving to New York, Sarah called me with news that shocked and delighted me at the same time. Mom, she said, the divorce is finally over. I am free. How do you feel? I asked. Relieved, sad, excited, everything at the same time. Sarah paused. But most importantly, I feel ready to start again. And how is that going to be? I do not know yet, said Sarah with a smile I could hear in her voice. But for the first time in my life, that does not scare me. It excites me. A year ago, after that night in the restaurant when I poured wine on Jason, my life changed in a way I could never imagine. Sarah was not the only one who transformed, and I learned that it is never too late for a new beginning. Today I sat on the train to New York in a new blue dress I bought especially for this adventure. Sarah organized her first exhibition at the New Horizon Gallery, and nothing would stop me from being there. Images of a Mother, a Memory was the name of the exhibition. During the last 6 months, Sarah drew and painted images of women of different ages, grandmothers, mothers, daughters. Every image spoke of strength, dignity, and courage. As the train entered the city, I thought about everything that happened. Sarah found herself in a new city, but I also found a new version of me in our small town. After Sarah left, I started volunteering at a local clinic, helping older people who had no family near them. My experience as a head nurse and my understanding of frightened people made me useful in that work. I also joined a women's club that organizes a community garden in the city park. Every Saturday, we plant flowers together and share stories of our lives. Martha, you have such energy, said Vera, a woman of 70 who recently moved to our town. Where do you get that strength? From my daughter, I said sincerely. She taught me it is never too late to do what is right. But the most important change was when I started looking at myself. I no longer saw myself as a woman whose main job was to take care of others. I saw myself as a woman who has her own interests, thoughts, and dreams. The train arrived at Grand Central Station, and Sarah was waiting for me with a huge smile. She looked beautiful, not just because she was well-dressed, but also because she looked confident and content. "Mom," she called and hugged me tightly, "I am so glad you came." "I would not miss this for anything in the world," I said, and I told her. We went to the gallery across town. Sarah talked to me about preparations for the exhibition, about how she chose the images, about what she wanted to do. I wanted to show that every woman, despite her age, has her own story of strength. She explained, "You are the inspiration for the whole exhibition." When we entered the gallery, I was breathless. Sarah exhibited 20 paintings. Each of them told its own story. There was a grandmother teaching a child to read when she was 70, a young mother raising 4 children alone, a middle-aged woman opening a restaurant after divorce. But the image that impressed me most was the portrait of the oldest woman in the gallery. Standing straight with dignity in her eyes, I needed a few moments to understand it was me, or at least how Sarah sees me. "Sarah," I said, and my voice trembled, "this image, that is you at the restaurant that night," she said quietly. "That is how I see you, as a woman who will never let someone humiliate those she loves." People gathered around us, Sarah's colleagues, artists, art lovers. I heard how they talked about the images, how Sarah explained them, how impressed they were with her work. Mr. Bennett, director of the art magazine, approached me while I looked at the exhibition. "You are Sarah's mother, right?" he said. "Yes, I am. Sarah talks about you often. She says you are the bravest woman she knows." Mr. Bennett paused. "After seeing these images, I understand what she thinks." The celebration was wonderful. Sarah talked about her work, thanked. The people who supported her glowed with happiness. I watched how she communicated with people. Confident, articulate, fearless. "This exhibition is dedicated to my mother," said Sarah to the group of visitors. "She taught me that courage does not depend on age, but on being ready to stand for what is right. Without her, none of this would be possible." My eyes filled with tears of pride. After that night, we sat in her small apartment drinking tea and talking about everything that happened. "Sarah," I said, "I am proud of the woman you have become, and I am proud of both of us," said Sarah. "Do you know what I have realized this year?" "Tell me." "I have realized that night in the restaurant was not the end of something bad. It was the beginning of something wonderful. The beginning of us both standing for ourselves." Sarah showed me the letters she received from women who saw her exhibition, women who wrote that they also found strength, that they left bad relationships, that they started careers that had faded, that they stood for themselves in ways they never had before. One woman wrote she saw your portrait and wondered when was the last time she stood correctly with that kind of dignity. Sarah told me she said that inspired her to leave a partner who always criticized her. "That is wonderful," I said. I feel like my heart is bursting. Top line. "Mom," Sarah said, taking my hands in hers, "I want to tell you something I maybe never said clearly." "What is that?" "Thank you for not leaving me. Even when I was so lost I could not see what was happening to me, you knew I was still here inside." "You were not lost," I said. "You were just hidden." But the real Sarah was there all the time, waiting for the opportunity to be seen. Sarah smiled through tears. "And what about you? How do you feel about where you are?" Sarah's question hung in the warm air of her apartment, and I realized the answer was already written on my face. I looked at my daughter, truly free, and knew that saving her had been the catalyst for saving myself. We often think love means enduring quietly, but real love sometimes requires a pitcher of ice water and a loud voice to drown out the disrespect. This is a work of fiction inspired by the silent battles fought in homes every day. While the characters are made up, the lesson is real. Dignity has no expiration date, and love should never cost you your self-worth.